transitional object being also the means of falsification of the self as circuit, that is, of the self as a relation for which the transitional object is a mediating factor. The human fact is essentially relational and mediational, if you can say. And the psyche is formed relationally, that is, by inscribing itself onto circuits of transindividuation on the basis of transitional, that is, technical and pharmacological facilitations. In French we say frayage, or in German Badum, used in relation to the neurological model of psychic functioning and containing the sense of the breaking open of pathway, which presuppose mediators, curators, priests, but also parents, artists, therapists of all kinds, and professors too, whose professors having a profession, that is a vocation, like priests, like clerks. What Winnicott calls the environment, that is transitional relational space, is here the crucial question. I quote Winnicott. Freud used the word sublimation to point the way to a place where cultural experience is meaningful, but perhaps he did not get so far as to tell us where in the mind cultural experience is. Freud and Klein avoided the full implications of dependence and therefore of the environmental factor, unquote. As environment, the relational fabric ties together through transitional and pharmacological mediations a physiology, a history, and a geography of the spirit and of the mind. Circuits of transindividuation are circuits of desire, in fact, that is, circulations of intensities, for speaking with Deleuze or Spinoza, that traverse and form by opening up networks, just as paths are opened, and just as movement is proven by moving, through which relations of attachment are tied together, philia, projections, identifications, acknowledgements, obligations, etc., but also deadlocks, imprisonment, boundaries, and borders delimiting territories. The pharmacology of the mind and of the spirit is a pharmacology of symbolic relations, but within which objects are the primary instances, and where what the Greeks called the symbolon is not a verb, but an object. Prior to being constituted hypothesical, the circuits of transindividuation whereby a mind is formed, these deploy themselves on the basis of infantile transitional relations, and as objects invested with spirit, in the sense that Husserl used this phrase when referring to books, but extending its use to all common objects. I quote Husserl: a glass, a house, a spoon, a theater, a temple, unquote. Those objects are Husserl's examples of the way that familiar objects are always already spiritual objects. There are, however, epochs and a genealogy to be established for these objects invested with spirit, on the basis of the infantile transitional object, through which spiritual and pharmacological configurations are formed. If this is not done in relation to a general organology, that is to brain, to body, etc., the principles of which there is no time to recall in here, general organology, and in relation to the process of grammatization which deploys itself within it, and which constitutes the preeminently pharmacological condition of nihilism. That is both the death of God and the reversal of all values. it will not be possible to think contemporary kenosis, that is, to overcome it. Within these epochs, objects invested with spirit which create intensities can be found objects in Melanesia and in New Zealand. The inhabitants called mana and home. Mana is that which can be located in an object, as if the object could carry the power of mana, a quote Marcel Mauss. Mana is not simply a force, a being. It's also an action, a quality, a state. One says of an object that it is mana in order to refer to this quality. People say that a being, a spirit, a man, a stone, or right has mana. The mana to do such and such a thing. The word covers a host of ideas which we would designate by phrases such as a sorcerer's power, a magical quality of a thing, a magical thing, etc. unquote. As such, mana erases boundaries and constitutes in magical societies a kind of traditional phenomenon on the scale of social relations, but as practices of sublimation preserve a transitional space in adult social life today, as Winnicott has shown. Mana, in quotes, Mauss, shows this confusion of actor, right, and things which seems to be fundamental to magic, unquote. What the Maori tribes call home, which is transmitted through exchanged objects and which transform them so that only thus do they become objects, describes an exchange of taonga in the Maori language, that is, an exchange of items, of articles, of goods, in the sense of one says about the items found in stores, if not of merchandise, a word most hesitates to use precisely because in this case there is no market. There is, on the other hand, the constitutional relations of obligation, and therefore the creation of a social bond through which the social group is formed, I quote Mauss. The taonga and all goods term strictly personal possess a spiritual power. You give me one of them, and I pass it on to a third party. He gives another to me in turn, because he is impelled to do so by the whole my present possessions. I, for my part, am obliged to give you that thing because I must return to you what is in reality the effect of the whole of your taonga. What imposes obligation in the present received and exchanged is the fact that the thing received is not inactive, even when it has been abandoned by the giver. It still possesses something of him. Through it, the giver has hold over the beneficiary just as being its owner. Through it, he has a hold over the thief. I will now finish my lecture by the question of the modern objects. Before speaking about that, let's examine what is the seal hunter doing when his cult is harpooned. He pursues the formation of his transitional space, and thereby enters into a relation with himself, such as the spirits destine him to enter. And with the seals, too, insofar as they are themselves spirits. Is this relational dimension superfluous or reducible, or on the contrary, constitutive of the symbolic and the imaginary? This is our question at the end. In the sedentary society, far removed from these hunters, from these seals and spirits, already urban,